You know what that means? It's time for Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers. Don, how was your weekend other than the obvious?
It wasn't all that great, to be honest about it. The weather was halfway decent, but I just didn't get to do the things that I like to do when I have time, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. It's getting closer to that season, unfortunately or fortunately. I guess it depends on how you people look at that. But Indiana is their men's basketball program continuing to, I don't want to use the word tank, but not performing to the level that they need to perform at against teams that they absolutely need to rise up to. And now Indiana swept by Penn State, Nebraska, and Northwestern. That I say that because that is just something of significance for a program that is not accustomed to that, and the fans there, of course, as well, not accustomed to that, and therefore voicing their displeasure.
Well, there's no question. They booed them off the floor halftime of the Nebraska ball game. Indiana was down 51-31 at halftime of that contest.
Have
I
you
don't.
ever seen? Not to interrupt you, but I don't ever recall. There have been a few times where they've been booed, but never at home at halftime. I don't recall that ever.
I've seen it. I have
Okay.
seen it. Yeah, it's not. It's not. It wasn't as demonstrative as that booing was for the Nebraska game. But they've been booed off the floor before. I can't honestly tell you when, because I know it's happened a couple of times here in recent years. But you know what? At this juncture, I understand the frustration of the fan base. I understand the disappointment that the fan base has. And I agree with it. But at the same time, I also realize that there's nobody more frustrated than the coaching staff and the players. They are all dealing with this just like the fan base is, and they're dealing with it because it's on them. And so that's the one thing I do know. So to sit here and pound on these guys a little bit at this juncture, I don't like doing that. But you have to be realistic about what's going on at this point. And this team has lost 5 games at home this year. That hasn't happened in quite some time. I don't know. I haven't looked up to see when the last time was, but it hasn't happened very often in the years that I've been at IU, and I've been here a long time, as everyone knows. That said, you've got to find a way to dig your way out of this. I think confidence with this ball club right now is the biggest issue. That and the fact that nobody seems to be able to take the bull by the horn, so to speak. Trey Galloway fights his butt off out there every ball game. I love that kid. He gives everything he's got, but sometimes it just doesn't go the way he'd like it to. There's little question that the frustration level with this ball club right now and the way that they're playing has hit an all-time high. And I say that because you can't lose 4 in a row here at the end. 8 of your last 10 have been losses. And there doesn't seem to be any way to dig out of it unless they have some kind of I don't want to say miracle game, but one of their best performances of the season. And that is almost impossible to get at this juncture when you are struggling and you're spiraling downhill. The fight that this team had early in the year, I think, was exceptional because they won a lot of close ball games that maybe shouldn't have been that close, but they found ways to win those contests. Now it's not happening. Yeah, they make comebacks. They got, I think, within 3 points of Nebraska. They got within 3 points of Penn State. But the game against Penn State was a much closer game all the way through. I mean, they never really trailed by more than 8 or 10 points in that contest. And they just seemed like they had a chance all the way through that game and just couldn't put it together at the end. So right now, the frustration level is high for everybody. And like I said, no more so than for the coaching staff and for the players.
Yeah, and 4 games left in the regular season for this Indiana team. So it is what it is as far as what to look forward to, which means, honestly, one more game in the Big Ten tournament, a minimum. But that is the end. That's the extent of what fans should look forward or have to look forward to this year. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just the honesty of what it is. And that's not something that anyone expected when this season began. There was more. The expectations obviously were higher with the return of the players that did come back and the addition of players like Khalil Ware, who exceeded expectations. To be honest with you, his play, because everyone said, "Well, he didn't play hard at Oregon and didn't do this." He's been Indiana's probably most consistent player on the season.
Well, he and Malik Renew. Renew has been very consistent too, except that he had this little downturn here in the last 4 or 5 ball games. Not this last game, because he had 27 in that contest. But Malik, he went through a little stumbling block area there too, where he wasn't playing his best, got himself into foul trouble early. I think frustration was a part of what he was dealing with there. But he did come back, and he's had a couple of good ball games since. I don't think there's any doubt that Ware has been a pretty consistent performer for this ball club. He's had some games where he didn't live up to expectations, but everybody does during a season. I mean, it's not like he's the only guy there. I mean, the biggest problem that this ball club has had of late, in my opinion, is they have gotten nothing consistently off the bench.
Zero.
I mean, it's just been a real struggle to get guys coming off the bench. You had Anthony Leal, who had a couple of really good ball games that he gave Indiana. Gunn gave him a couple sporadic performances that were critical at the time that was necessary to be critically good. He helped them win, I think, the Ohio State game and the Michigan game. I think those were 2 where he came in and gave them some really solid minutes. Anthony Walker, who was the best guy off the bench on a consistent basis throughout much of the season, here the last third of the year, has almost been unheard from. And at times he hasn't played in a couple ball games. So those are coaches' decisions. And, we don't know what's happening off the court and behind the scenes, so to speak, of guys not playing hard or practicing hard, or who knows what the reasons were that he didn't play. But all of a sudden he's kind of gone down the tubes. And so where are you going to get your help? And the guys that start in this ball club have been getting into foul trouble. Malik has had that issue. Ware's had it for 2 or 3 ball games here in the last 5 or 6 contests. Galloway's been the one guy that you can count on to play a lot of minutes in almost every ball game, and Trey has had his issues, as everybody knows. And again, he's playing out of position. So what's the answer? Well, at this point, it's finding a way to win a ball game. And they've got another chance tomorrow night when they take on Wisconsin, they're 5-5 since Indiana played them the first time. And they beat Indiana soundly in that ball game in Madison, but Indiana was able to put points on the scoreboard in that contest, just not enough, because they got beat 91-79, something like that, in a game that in the second half, it was just kind of up and down the floor, nobody playing any defense. So, but it's a Wisconsin team that's beatable. They can be beat. But Indiana is going to have one of their best performances of the season, and certainly here in the last 10 ball games or so, if they're going to come up with a victory.
Yeah, Wisconsin is a team that I was thinking had things going before that loss that they had to Purdue, which at that time they were still very much in play for the Big Ten title. But they had lost a game just before that Purdue game, which turned into 4 straight, which turned into 5 out of 6 games. Which they've still lost 2 out of 7, 2 out of 7 games. They've not been winning. They've lost to virtually everyone. They've lost to Nebraska. They lost to Michigan. They lost to Rutgers.
Right.
They lost to Iowa. So this is one of the opportunities that Indiana does have to find a win if they can find the ability to do the basic fundamental things that got them beat against Penn State, which was simply the inability to hit free throws, which, wow, shocker there, and the inability to hit from behind the arc. Those 2 simple things, which
are not simple.
are not simple for Indiana, and Penn State didn't do them at an exceptional level. They just did them at a normal level, and unfortunately, Indiana was not able to keep up because that was the difference in that game.
Well, right now, the only way that this team can turn it around is to get out there and just get rid of all that negative thinking, get rid of the negative feelings that they have, play the game like they know they can play it, be physical on the floor, don't get into foul trouble a little physical. I'm talking about being physical from the standpoint, play your game, play with the energy level that you need to play with. The intensity has got to be there. That's the one thing we haven't seen a consistent performance out of this ball club from an intensity standpoint. You've got to be able to guard the 3-point line. This team can do that. They've shown that they can do that, but there are games where they just don't. They don't get up into guys. I mean, that performance against Nebraska in the first half was just abysmal from that perspective. And granted, Nebraska got hot, but at the same time, you can't get down 20 and expect to make a comeback and win the ball game when you're down 20 points at halftime. Yeah, you did it against Ohio State. They were down 18 in that ball game and came back and won it. But that's only going to happen. That's the last time that was done was 1998, I think, or someplace in there, when they had an 18-point comeback or comeback of more points than that. So this is an issue right now. It's all up here. It's right there in their heads at this point. And if they let the frustration continue to flourish and they let the disappointment to be the primary thing they're thinking about, it's not going to turn around. But they've got 4 games here that are winnable games. They've already beaten Maryland once. They've beaten Minnesota once. They haven't beat Wisconsin, but they did so last year when they played them in Bloomington and beat them handily, if you remember. And then they've got the ball game against Michigan State, another team that is struggling this year toward the end of the season, who, Michigan State was expected to be much better than what they are at this point. They're 9-8 in conference play. So, but
they just lost at home yesterday to Ohio State, of all teams.
Right. Got beat at the buzzer. So they're struggling. And Tom Izzo, that's really strange to say at this time of year that Tom Izzo's teams are struggling, but they are. So these are all 4 games that you could win and get on a little run here at the end of the season, get yourself out of that Wednesday date for a Big Ten tournament play, and get yourself back into the mode of winning basketball. And this is a mindset thing right now. And to get past what they're dealing with at this juncture, the only way to do that is go out there and bust your tail.
And not playing that first day of the Big Ten tournament is a uber importance, first of all, because not that Indiana has not won the tournament. We know that. But you do not win it from the back end. So to have any chance of making any noise at all in that tournament, they probably don't want to start at the back. It's embarrassing, for one thing, for Indiana fans, I'm sure, but Indiana has to show that they can beat these teams, and they have to come together in their own heads, wherever it is that they have to, whatever they have to do to win, they're not doing it on the floor and off.
Well, I think the start of tomorrow night's game against Wisconsin is going to be huge. If Indiana comes out with fire in their belly, there's going to be a chance. If they don't come out with fire in their belly and they get down by 8, 10, 12 points at halftime again, I think this season is going to close on them quickly, because this is a ball club right now that I think is fragile from a mind standpoint, from a mental standpoint. I really do. And I don't know how you change that. Well, I do know how you change it. You win. You got to find a way to win. And to do that, this team has to change their whole thinking process going into ball games.